Andy Reid has landed, and he's landed in Kansas City. Welcome into the Sporting News Studios as we talk about the former coach of the Philadelphia Eagles becoming the current coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. My name is Tom Vandervoort, and joining me now on the phone, our NFL writer Cliff Brown. And Cliff, very simply, why do you think Andy Reid ended up in Kansas City, and is that the best fit for him?
Well, I think he ended up there because it was the type of situation he was looking for where he would have final say over the entire football operations. Clark Hunt, the Chiefs owner, had said that the next head coach would report directly to him. And that's the same kind of relationship that Reid had in Philadelphia with Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner. And, yeah, Reid is a guy who not only wants to coach, but really be the kingpin in the organizations. Now, is it a good fit? Personally, I really don't think so. I've always felt that, Andy Reid, probably with some of the family issues he went through with the death of his son, maybe should have taken a year off, taken a step back. The last 2 years with the Eagles have been very difficult for him, with the team not playing well. The players just didn't seem to respond to Andy Reid the way they did for most of his tenure. I know Andy Reid had a tremendous run in Philly, 5 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl appearance. But, I'm wondering if the Chiefs would have been better off maybe going with a guy who, was a younger guy, maybe not, had 14 years of wear and tear. It's such a stressful job at being NFL head coach. So we'll see if it works out. But I think maybe, the Chiefs should have gone another direction.
Very interesting. And you mentioned the personnel, input on personnel, and I remember sort of a few years ago, the conventional wisdom was, gee, you don't want your coach too involved in personnel decisions. But now I hear Joe Banner in Cleveland mentioning maybe that would be something they'd want their coach to do. I know Mike Shanahan has a lot of input in Washington, and now Reid in Kansas City. Is that kind of conventional wisdom changing at all, do you think?
It depends on the owner and his philosophy. Some owners want a personnel guy telling the coach, or at least having final say. And we've seen it work both ways. The Ravens, with Ozzie Newsome for a long time as their general manager, he's been great drafting players. That situation, John Harbaugh isn't involved with his personnel in Baltimore. The Chiefs, they could have looked maybe at a guy like Mike McCoy, the Broncos offensive coordinator. And here's a name, too, that I think Hugh Jackson, the Raiders former coach, whose name hasn't really been that prominent in a lot of these coaching searches, but Jackson got kind of a raw deal, I thought, being fired by the Raiders. He's not a guy you want running personnel, but as far as being a head coach, an offensive-minded head coach, I think he could do a good job with somebody. And both Jackson and McCoy are familiar with the AFC West. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Reid in Kansas City. He will have time to rebuild. Nobody's expecting him to take them to the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, now do you think is the most important first move? Obviously, they had the first pick in the NFL draft, but unlike last year, this is not a quarterback kind of heavy draft, at least. Most folks don't seem to think so. So what do you think is the most important first thing for Andy Reid to do?
Yeah, he needs a quarterback. And as you just mentioned, he's not going to draft one, I don't think, with that number 1 pick, because none of the prospects in this year's draft are seen worthy of being the number 1 pick. However, the Chiefs may look to go after a veteran, maybe somebody like an Alex Smith, who's probably going to want out of San Francisco. And Reid is seen as a guy who can develop quarterbacks. Kevin Cobb played his best football under Andy Reid. Michael Vick played his best football under Andy Reid. So I look for them to go after a quarterback, probably a guy who's already has some NFL experience.
All right, there you go. Well, listen, Cliff, we'll see what happens with the remaining coaches out there, guys like Lovie Smith, and, of course, you mentioned Mike McCoy and some of the others. So when we find out what happens to them, we'll get you back on the phone, man.
Busy time of year, Tom, but always fun.